Ladies and gentlemen, get the book Dr. Joshua Bowen wrote, The Atheist Handbook to the Old Testament. It is extremely full of knowledge and information for anyone, as well as join the Patreon. There's hundreds of videos that have been not released to the internet. You can ask questions and I will record them with these scholars in high definition. I do that all the time. You can also personal message me and you help the community grow. Thanks a lot. Dr. Joshua Bowen. Genocide.
All the fun topics.
Yeah, you know, it's a delightful thing to discuss. Genocide is a very positive thing, I guess. No, I'm just kidding. Obviously, it's horrific.
Yeah.
The Bible seems to condone such actions, but let me not say that. Let me allow you to be the one who takes all the heat. So I used to defend the Bible, and when you're seeing it from that side, from that point of view, that your God is right, he could do no wrong, no matter what he says, then you hear, and I want to give one modern analogy, for example, and this is horrible, I know I'm going to catch some crap for this, but just making the point. A woman heard the voice of God and drowned her 4 children. God told her to do it.
Yeah.
That's an extreme case. Obviously, even Christians will go, well, that's not us. Obviously, that's that's psychosis or insanity going on. And I think
but the principle is the same.
Yeah. So God of the Bible is condoning such actions in 1 Samuel 15 with King Saul. Can you tell us, pretend no one knows they're watching us, and maybe they don't. What happens in 1 Samuel 15? What's God saying to do? And then we can get into other examples.
Sure. Yeah, so in 1 Samuel 15, this is sort of the quintessential example that comes up in atheist versus Christian apologist debates because it's so clear. In 1 Samuel 15, Saul is king, and it's in this series of stories in the book of Samuel that Saul is shown to be the one that's not the good king, right? And he's going to be rejected, and David is going to be the one that's actually God's anointed. And so this is part of the story where Saul's being rejected. This is sort of like one of the 2 places that I'm thinking of where he's overtly rejected. And God comes to him and says, okay, I want you to go strike Amalek. Go wipe them out, right? And it wouldn't be as, it would be bad, but it would just be another bad example, I think, for atheists or skeptics to bring up, except that he specifically says men, women, children, infants, babies, right? Sheep, cattle. In other words, it's like everybody. It's not just go kill all the, males 20 years and older that are combatants. And
every living thing.
Yeah, it's like scorched earth is what we're talking about.
You're not even supposed to take their goods, from what I understand, or something. I could be wrong, but.
So this is what's called cherem in Hebrew. And that word is translated a bunch of different ways. But it's you hear it called the ban. These people are under the ban. They're to be utterly destroyed in the verbal form. But basically, and it's a complicated word to sort of translate, but it's to devote to destruction. But it's to devote in such a way that it's set apart for Yahweh. It's set apart for God. So these are his things now. These are set aside, devoted to him. And of course, the way that manifests itself, if you're devoting something to the deity, it's you destroy it, you kill it, whatever. So, and the Hebrew Bible is not the only place that we see this. We see this in the Mesha inscription as well. This sort of devoting something to destruction, wiping them all out.
Could I use a modern language to kind of get if this is something that relates to us when we say, oh, you're about to meet God?
Yeah.
It's like saying, I'm devoting you to God, meaning I'm about to kill you.
I think that's fair.
Even though it's more sacred looking in the ancient world.
Kill them all, let God sort them out, this sort of thing. Yeah. It's a little different, but yeah. I'm with you.
Feel me, brother. Feel me.
So here in the passage, Saul, goes with the Israelites, and he kills everybody except the king, and some of the choice sheep and cattle. And so Samuel comes back, and this is important. The fact that they kill everybody else, just they spare the king and some of the choice, animals. And so Samuel comes back and says, essentially, so did you do it? And Saul says, yep, good to go. Like, yay. And you can almost picture Samuel going, what is this sound of sheep? The sheep bleating in the background that I hear. Ho hum, what ho? I think what ho is the right one to use there. Why do I hear then, the noise of these cattle? And Saul's like, well, the people spared, some of the best sheep to sacrifice to Yahweh, because, we really wanted to sacrifice to Yahweh. And so anyway, this narrative gets, brought up quite a bit, because it's like, from our modern standpoint, it's quite egregious. God's calling for the genocide of the Amalekites. And so very, 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 very often, Christian apologists will go, but. It can't mean what it says, right? It can't mean what it seems to say in the English. So they'll point out later in 1 Samuel, the Amalekites, David fights the Amalekites. And so it can't mean then that they were supposed to wipe them. It must be hyperbole.
They do the same thing in Canaan Conquest.
Yes, it's hyperbole. If you're interested in seeing John Collins' reaction to this, by the way, I asked him this question when I interviewed him last year, and basically his response was, nice try, in that awesome accent that he has.
Yeah, he does.
I love listening to John speak. But the narrative hinges in 1 Samuel 15 on the utter destruction of the people. So we can talk about why the Amalekites show back up later for David to fight. But the big thing is to look at the literary structure, the literary nature of 1 Samuel 15. So the question that I asked, we had a debate with Stuart and Cliff Connectley. Mm-hmm. And they brought up, they show up later in 1 Samuel, so this is just hyperbole. So the first question that you have to ask, I think, is so what? Okay, so does that mean that, what are they supposed to go tickle them? What are they doing? What's the hyperbole? Is the hyperbole go kill 3 of them? Go kill 5 of them?
Go have a rap battle.
Yeah, go have a rap battle, right? Are they playing a football game against them? What is it be specific. What's the hyperbole? Because John, Collins said, I think there's obviously hyperbole that shows up all throughout the ancient Near East. It doesn't mean they didn't kill anybody. It means that they killed as many people as they could and said that they killed more.
I mean, right? Egypt does the same thing,
they all do.
We annihilated the.
You see it in the Merneptah Stela, for example, right? The Merneptah Stela from 1207 talks about how Israel's seed is no more, right? Well, I mean, obviously the seed is not no more. Does it mean that they went up there and did arm wrestling matches with them? No, they did some conflict with them.
They crushed them.
Yeah, and that's the picture that they're trying to get across. So, okay. But there's a bigger problem in 1 Samuel. You can argue those types of things, I think, a little more convincingly in the book of Joshua, for example, with the Canaanites. That maybe it's understood in the context. I still don't see that as being the right answer, but there's some aspects to it, I think, that can follow through, like in 9 through 12 in Joshua. But here in 1 Samuel 15, the narrative hinges on Saul killing everyone.
Right.
And so the question that I asked Stuart and Cliff was, okay, what's the hyperbole? Is the hyperbole, like who's giving the hyperbole? Is it God being hyperbolic to Saul? In other words, is God saying to Saul, hey, in the same way that a coach would say to his football team, hey, go massacre, the Steelers in this game? Is the hyperbole understood by the players? Because the players don't go out and literally kill the other team. They understand this is hyperbolic language, and so they act accordingly.
And what would be the punishment for him? I mean, animals only? Like, you reserved animals, that was it. I mean, Samuel seems to be mad not only at the animals, but he reserved a king.
Yeah, and so this is sort of the issue. If Saul understands, like football players understand, go massacre the other team, why in the world is God upset?
Right.
Because Saul could just go, whoa, 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 whoa. It's like, it's like the Pee Wee League coming back over to the sidelines and the coach saying, hey, how come you didn't take that AK-47 and mow all those players down? I told you to massacre them.
Right.
Like they would go, whoa, whoa, coach, that's hyperbole. It's a figure of speech that you're using. Right. So in this sense, if Saul understands God to be hyperbolic and use this sort of massacre language, Saul would have turned around to Samuel and said, whoa, 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 wait a minute. You said, wipe them out. What you meant by that was hyperbolic language.
Or XYZ.
Yeah, you didn't mean kill them all, right?
Right. And that's what makes what you're saying, you're building up something so powerful right here. It's all on God right here. Because what's really scary and dangerous about this is he's mad you didn't do worse to them.
Yeah. That's exactly right.
And he's already done horrible according to the narrative. Like,
yeah. That's the thing. I think we've got to be able to understand what the ban is to these ancient Near Eastern societies. And the ban, they didn't see it as a horrible thing.
Right.
They saw it as an absolutely necessary thing. Saul in this narrative is cast in a terrible light. And that sounds really weird to us. Because, like, you would expect Saul, at least in some sense, has some form of humanity about him because he doesn't kill everybody. But that's not what the narrative is doing. The narrative is saying, bad Saul.
In fact, the original readers of this would have Saul in negative light because, man, he didn't do it. And to them, like we talk about criteria of embarrassment, this wouldn't be embarrassing to the ancient world ever.
Yeah.
To us today, we now realize, holy moly, woman just said God told her to drown her 4 kids. That's not that ugly when you look at narratives and go, well, their parents, doing horrible things. Now, I'm not trying to say that because technically it seems like God's not happy with Molech, right? Burning children to the fire, things like that, obviously. But there seems to be hints at child sacrifice, give your firstborn. So we can get into that.
Yeah.
You want to talk about it? Bring it, baby. We'll rap battle it out. I'll annihilate you. I will murder you. Hint, hint. Hyperbole, in case anyone's wondering what I'm doing there. Anyway, go ahead, Dr. Josh. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I think the important, you're hitting it, right? The important thing here in the narrative is that Saul is rejected specifically because he doesn't follow God's command through Samuel. And the command was to kill everyone. And the narrative says, did you kill everyone? Yeah, well, except for the king and these sheep. And so what happens to rectify it? Samuel has to go and, kill the king, the Amalekite king. So in other words, the reason that Saul is rejected is because he doesn't kill everyone. So had Saul if this were hyperbolic language from God to Saul, Saul would have said, wait a minute, you didn't tell me that. If it's hyperbolic language in the narrative, then the narrative doesn't make any sense. Because again, Saul is rejected because he doesn't kill everyone. And you can see parallels to this sort of thing in places like the story of Jericho, right, with Rahab. If you think about Rahab, the whole point of the narrative, if you remember the story, Joshua and Caleb come in and she hides them. And when they leave, say, hey, hang the scarlet thread or whatever out the window, and this house and anyone who's in it will be spared. Well, if this is hyperbolic that they wiped out Jericho, well, that wouldn't be true. Mm-hmm. It wouldn't just be anybody that's in that house. It would be like there'd be a whole bunch of people that were spared, right? It's just but the narrative focuses in on everything, for the whole wall falls except for this, right? Everybody's killed except for Rahab and her family. And the same is true with Achan, right? If in the next chapter, I think it's chapter 7, Achan takes from things in Jericho that are under the ban, that are devoted to Yahweh. He takes some of them, right? And
hides them in his tent, right?
yeah, underneath of his tent.
Yeah.
And so you can't, it's not hyperbole that that stuff is devoted to Yahweh. It's everything is devoted to Yahweh. So it's this complete, the complete aspect of it in the narrative. Everything is devoted to Yahweh. Everything. Because if it weren't, Achan could be like, well, I mean, you didn't mean everything. I mean, it's hyperbole, right? It's just a lot of stuff. You have to devote a lot of stuff.
You almost did a Kent Hovind there.
I know. I started to slip into it there.
I felt that. That was
and
powerful.
that's because I'm talking about the Lord, and of course that's it's where the real spiritual nature comes.
That was powerful, bro. I could feel the hyperbole coming from your voice. I did want to mention something, and I want you to continue with this. This is such a great recording, by the way. Saul killed his thousands. David killed his tens of thousands. In fact, that to me now sounds like a mockery of Saul not doing what David did.
That's exactly what it is.
David actually really did what God asked him to do. Think about it.
Yeah.
Glory to David. He actually annihilates people for God. He does the job. Oh, I'll get you twice the foreskin. Don't worry, I'll bring back the bloody foreskin. Woo! I mean, this is how gory the book really is if you get raw. But in the ancient world, I bet you and me, we would think the same way. I'm not trying to play like,
of course.
We're reading it for what it is in its time, trying to say this is what they say. But
that's what you do.
Don't try to supplant it 3,000 years into the future and pretend it doesn't say what it says.
Yeah.
This is what the apologists you debated are doing. This is what other apologists are doing. We want it to, once again, they want to say, you're corrupting, you're trying to manipulate, you don't want the Bible to be true, you're attacking God. No, we want to understand what the Bible says, and guess what? It's not as pretty as you want it to be for our context.
Yeah, that's right.
But anyway, please continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, no, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think that in order to come to a right understanding and a right interpretive model of any ancient text, I mean, we've got to try to get back to what it is actually saying the best that we can. And so if you're starting with the conclusion that this is the inspired word of God and it's like the basic instructions before leaving Earth, right, the Bible, which I think is a really clever acronym. But if you're trying to live by it, if you're trying to, let me just grab the book because I recommend it so often, wherever it is. It's terrible that I can't just find it. There it is. Sorry.
You're good.
John Collins' book, What Are Biblical Values? Like, read it. This is such a good book. He did such a good job writing it. But, basically what Collins is saying is a Christian, right? He's Catholic, right? I think he's Catholic.
Yes, he's, I would say, a cultural.
Yeah. But I mean, like, not antagonistic toward Christianity.
No, he just doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. He's traditional, but he doesn't believe it.
But I think that the point is, like, he's not like anti-Christian is what I'm saying.
Right.
But his point in this book is that, look, you can't pick up the Old Testament, understand it in its context, and then apply it and create an ethical system that will work today. Don't do that. No good, right?
Yeah.
Right?
With his voice, I could hear him saying, "No good."
But this is I think what happens is we come to the text believing it to be a tool to create an ethical system, yet we have our own ethical system, our own morality that we've developed over the past 2,500 years, and we try to make them connect. And so what that leads to is, well, the text can't really be saying that. because God is loving, and loving gods don't do this. So it has to, there's got to be a way to understand this where it doesn't mean that, or that God is justified in doing it. And so we start to go to all these different lengths, when in reality, what we should be doing is saying, okay, don't start with the interpretation, start with the data points. What is it that this text is saying? What's the narrative structure? What's the literary aspect of what's it trying to tell us? Now, once we understand it, how should we be using this ancient text? A good example of this that everybody would agree with is the Epic of Gilgamesh, right? You don't start with, okay, we're going to base our values and ethics on the Epic of Gilgamesh, and then try to read back into it and figure out, okay, so we should be, disrespecting the gods, and we should be trying to live forever. Sorry, I'm just trying to pull stuff out here, but
It's all good.
We don't do that. What we do is we say, okay, let's start. What is this piece of literature? It's this tremendous story, epic story, about how Gilgamesh goes through this cycle of life and begins as this brash young man who's going to live forever, make a name for himself, by doing all these heroic things, and he doesn't understand his own mortality, and then sees his friend die and goes on this journey to get immortality because he recognizes the fragility of life, and then ultimately comes to realize that the way to have immortality is to have your name live on after you. And it's this cycle, it's this process that he goes through. Well, that's a beautiful, so once you understand that, then you say, what can we take from that? Oh my gosh, well, life is fragile. Life is ephemeral, right? We're not always going to have it. So what do? Well, we try to live our best life. That's how you utilize an ancient text like that. That's how Ecclesiastes used it, right? Because Ecclesiastes is pulling from Gilgamesh. That's the nature, that's how these things work. And so if we can look at the biblical text, let's take the story of 1 Samuel 15. If we want to interpret it that way, all right, what's the story? Saul is supposed to do this thing. Yeah, it's really horrible. Okay, but let's forget about that for a second. This horrible thing that he's supposed to do. What's the message? What's the principle? What's the big thing? What can we take from this? Read a response sort of thing. Well, obey God, right? Do what God says. Sure, in that regard, forget about massacring people, right? If God tells you to do this, there are going to be consequences if you don't, right? You're going to suffer in life if you don't. Maybe that's the big picture thing to take from that. It's better to obey God than to sacrifice, right? So maybe that's a better one to take from this. Obey God, don't try to come at it from your own perspective and your own means, disobeying God, thinking you're doing a good thing for him.
I do think that does play a part of what is intended, but I don't know how you can run away from that context. I don't know. I think you bring up an example that is inescapable. The one thing they might do is, like you said, they're going to try and get out of this, wiggle out of this particular, and try to do a reader aspect like we're talking about. But I could imagine them immediately going, yeah, but do you know how bad they were? These people they had to kill. That's what I always hear. Or do you know what they were intending to do to Israel? And it's like, oh my goodness.
Right, but see, the thing is that this is what I mean. Understanding that ancient Near Eastern text would also understand the propagandistic nature of that,
right,
and how it's putting Saul down and building David up. It understands all of that. Mm-hmm. It's after you've understood all of those things. So because you understand all those things, you then say, okay, well, this isn't like a manual on how we're supposed to live our lives, like in detail. We're not supposed to, this isn't a rule book we're supposed to go by. We can pick up big things from it. We can pick up sort of principles, general principles from it. In the same way that you can read Pride and Prejudice, Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice, and you don't live based on it, but you get some what's the moral of the story,
right?
Sort of thing. And so I think I think if you're going, in my opinion, if you're going to revere the biblical text, that's the way to do it, is to, what's the moral of the story? Let's not try to whitewash it and say that it's something that it's not. Let's understand it in its ancient Near Eastern context, and then say, okay, well, this was bad from our perspective, but from their perspective, what's the moral of the story? Serve God. Do what he says. Don't do it in your own eyes. So that means when I bring that into a 21st century context, when God says, hey, love your neighbor, right? I believe that I'm supposed to love my neighbor. Well, do that according to God's standard. Don't do bad to your neighbor because you think that's the right thing to do. No, do what God says, even if it seems kind of weird, or counterproductive or whatever. Like that I'm better with, I suppose. Certainly better with than trying to use it as some sort of a step-by-step instruction manual on how to establish my values.
I can appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course.